Welcome to the Hindu Daily. We're jumping right into a deep dive today on the highest offices in India, the president, the governors, and this ethical tightrope they have to walk while upholding the Constitution.
It's a fascinating area.
It really is. And this analysis brings up a crucial point. When you're in an office like that, inaction or, biased action is just as big an infraction as any outright transgression.
And what's interesting here is this cultural observation of what they call Advaitic selflessness.
Right.
In politics, it means you act without attachment to the outcome, just to make sure you don't leave a negative mark. It's a sort of a self-protecting mechanism.
And the symbol for this is just a pen.
The simple pen.
Yeah.
The idea of being ever ready to sign.
Which seems to be the exact opposite of what the Constitution demands from them, doesn't it? It requires judgment, not just rubber stamping.
Precisely. And there's a historical caution here. We all remember the cartoonist Abu Abraham's depiction of the president signing the 1975 emergency proclamation, signing it with a stylus at an odd moment. It just shows how easy it is to affix a signature when the real duty is the moral courage to pause and say, no, very sorry, but no.
That courage is what we really need to unpack. The source highlights two exemplary presidents who showed that kind of constitutional fairness.
Yes, R. Venkataraman, who serves from 87 to 92, and K.R. Narayan from 97 to 2002.
And Narayan, or KRN, his independent use of that power really set a standard, didn't it?
It absolutely did. He famously used his discretion to return recommendations for, dismissing governments on two huge occasions.
Yeah.
He put constitutional principles ahead of politics.
Let's detail those because they are such powerful examples of checks and balances working. First, in 1997, he returned the recommendation from the Union Cabinet, led by PM I.K. Gujral at the time, to dismiss the BJP government in UP.
Right. And then he did it again in 1998. He pushed back on the governor's recommendation to use Article 356 to dismiss Rabari Devi's government in Bihar, even with all these claims of financial mismanagement.
And in both cases, once he returned it for reconsideration, the proposal was just dropped.
That is integrity in action. And that same theme, that integrity, connects directly to the recent Supreme Court verdict on President Draupadi Murmu's 16th presidential reference.
Okay, so how does that connect?
Well, the five-judge bench had to balance two things. On one hand, they were conservative in upholding the letter of the law.
Meaning
Meaning they said, okay, governors can't be bound by a fixed arbitrary deadline for studying bills. But, and this is the key part, they were very realistic in upholding the spirit of the Constitution.
So they ruled that evasive inaction, just sitting on a bill forever, isn't allowed.
It is not permissible. Exactly.
Mm.
The court was careful not to school the high office or clutch at a jurisdiction, as Venkataraman himself used to say.
I see.
They just focused on finding that balance.
Yeah.
The power to do right has to be matched with the right way to do it. The expectation is clear. You have to rise above your limitations.
Okay, let's pivot now from high political integrity to public health and the shadow hanging over India's food landscape. We're talking about the growing scrutiny of street food.
This is a massive public health concern, and it's mainly because of the sheer scale of it all. We have this really shocking example from Chennai back in July 2024.
The Pani Puri raids.
The Pani Puri raids. 58 stalls, and they found contaminated water being used. Vendors dipping their hands directly into chutneys. This isn't just a small hygiene issue. It's systemic.
And the regulatory challenge must be almost insurmountable. I mean, the FSSAI governs both packaged food and street food.
And that's the problem. For packaged products, enforcement is way simpler. You've got traceability, standard protocols, pasteurization, things like that.
Right, you have levers to pull.
You have levers. But with street food, the sector is unorganized, it's mobile, and the stats from the Observer Research Foundation really drive home the problem.
What are you talking about here?
An estimated 100 million foodborne illnesses and about 1,020,000 deaths annually.
120,000 deaths. That's comparable to some of the worst infectious diseases combined.
It is. And a huge portion of that is linked directly to these informal sources.
And it's not just biological contamination, right? There are these other unsafe practices, like reusing cooking oil over and over again.
Which diminishes the nutritional value and forms harmful trans fats and other toxic compounds. And, for vendors on thin margins, there's always that incentive to use cheaper, maybe adulterated ingredients.
So what's the FSSAI doing?
They're trying to bridge the gap. They've rolled out training and certification programs, like one in Mumbai with the BMC, focusing on basic hygiene, safe handling, storage. It's an uphill battle, but it's essential.
So the core message here is that while street food is, I mean, it's integral to our culture, it's part of the social fabric,
Of course.
the health risks are just too big to overlook, especially with mortality stats like that.
Exactly. The future of food in India has to be shaped by an unwavering commitment to safety, not just cultural sentimentality. It has to be a public health priority.
All right, shifting gears to electoral politics. The Special Intensive Revision, or SR, of electoral rolls became a huge political flashpoint in the Bihar 2025 assembly election.
A political volcano is a good way to put it.
Mm.
This was a massive process,
Mm.
a net deletion of around 44 lakh voters. That came from deleting 68 lakh names and adding 24 lakh new ones.
And of course, it became a classic political fight.
Oh, absolutely. The ruling NDA welcomed it, said it was necessary to remove infiltrators and duplicates. But the opposition, Congress, and RJD, they were furious.
They called it systematic disenfranchisement.
And vote chory, vote theft. It got so contentious the Supreme Court had to step in multiple times.
Which brings us to the big analytical question we can actually answer today. Did this massive revision of the rolls actually determine the NDA's victory?
That's exactly what researchers tested with a detailed data analysis. And the overall result, it showed a lot of continuity with the 2024 general election. The NDA got 46.6%, just a small 1.4% drop. The Mahagathbandhan dropped a little more. To figure out the SIR's real influence, they compared the change in vote share with the decrease in the electorate across every single constituency.
And what did the data actually say about this so-called vote chory?
Well, the data analysis pretty much debunked the claim that deletions swung the election. The correlation coefficient between the roll deletions and the NDA's performance was only 0.192.
So for our listeners, what does a correlation coefficient of 0.192 and an R-squared of 0.037 actually mean in political terms?
It means the relationship is extremely weak, almost negligible. That R-squared value 0.037 means that only 3.7% of the variation in the NDA's performance can be explained by the changes in the electoral roll.
So in plain English,
constituencies with massive deletions were no more likely to show an increased NDA advantage than those with minimal deletions. The victory seems based on the same factors as the last election, not on messing with the voter list.
that's a very clear conclusion. But there was a side finding that does justify some of the controversy around fairness, right? Even if it didn't affect the outcome.
Yes, and this is crucial. The process caused a disproportionate drop in the number of women on the electoral rolls. The gender ratio fell from 907 to 892.
Even though women turned out to vote in high numbers.
Exactly. So that suggests a real flaw in the revision process that disproportionately hit female voters, regardless of who won.
Let's shift from state politics to the core of rationality itself by looking at our closest relatives in the animal kingdom. We all know the history, Jane Goodall in 1960.
The chimps using twigs to fish for termites.
Which basically erased the line between humans and apes when it came to tool use.
Well now, a new study in Science from October 30th suggests another trait we thought was uniquely human might be shared.
Which is?
The ability to weigh evidence, revise your beliefs, and, well, to change your mind. It really challenges our whole definition of rationality.
That is genuinely profound. So how on earth did they test something so complex, like belief revision, in a nonverbal way?
They observed 15 to 23 chimpanzees at the Ngamba Island Sanctuary in Uganda. The researchers used something called a Bayesian model to track their decisions.
Okay, a Bayesian model. What's
Yeah.
that in simple terms?
It's basically a framework that describes how a rational agent updates their beliefs when they get new evidence. The goal was to see if the chimps were combining clues rationally or just, following the most recent signal they got.
And what were the findings? What showed they were actually weighing the evidence?
They ran a few tests. The first was a strong versus weak clues test. Say, actually seeing the food versus just hearing a faint rattle. The chimps consistently went for the stronger, more reliable clue, no matter it came first or second.
So they're assessing the quality of the information, not just the timing.
Exactly. They aren't just being impulsive. Then, in a memory test, a bit like the Monty Hall problem for humans, they used 3 containers. When they removed the container with the strongest clue, the chimps chose the one with the weak clue over the one with no clue. This shows they were keeping multiple possibilities in mind.
And the final piece of proof, their ability to totally change their minds.
The defeater clue test. Chimps would change their choice if a defeater, clue-like revealing the rattle, was just a pebble, not food, directly contradicted a prior strong clue. This suggests they are aware of the reasons for their choices.
So they're capable of rational belief revision.
It certainly looks that way. Lead author Hanna Schleihoff gave this great real-world example. A chimp sees a red cluster of leaves from far away and thinks it's fruit. But when it gets closer and sees it was mistaken, it has to revise its belief that the tree is full of ripe fruit.
What are the implications of this, then?
Well, it really makes us look closer at the evolutionary roots of human rationality. This sophisticated ability might be far more widely shared among the great apes than we ever thought. It raises huge questions about what really makes human thought unique.
That's a perfect pivot point from the rationality of chimpanzees to the seeming irrationality of some human systems. Let's talk about institutional credibility, specifically state public service commissions, or PSCs.
Yes, the systemic lapses here lead to constant controversies, litigation, and this huge trust deficit among job applicants.
It's a massive failure of institutional fairness.
It is, and the 2025 National Conference in Telangana is the perfect time to discuss reform. The basic problem is the difference between how state PSCs operate and how the Union Public Service Commission, the UPSC, operates.
How so?
The UPSC, for the most part, operates in a politically sterile environment. Members are appointed based on merit, on nonpartisan experience.
But the state PSCs operate in what the source calls a politically osmotic environment. What does that mean in practice?
It means they absorb political influence like a sponge. The spoil system often compromises appointments. Minimum age, qualifications, public standing, they're often just ignored.
Which undermines the whole institution from the get-go.
Exactly. And procedurally, this lack of planning hurts efficiency. States often don't have a dedicated Ministry of Personnel, so vacancy notifications are irregular, recruitment cycles drag on forever, and applicants get incredibly frustrated.
And the evaluation itself is more complex at the state level, isn't it?
Much more. State PSEs really struggle with what's called inter-C moderation. That's the complex job of standardizing marks from different examiners to ensure fairness.
I see.
Add to that the daunting task of accurately applying all the different quotas, vertical, horizontal, regional, and you just have a recipe for constant litigation.
So, to restore faith, what are the big structural reforms being suggested?
They fall into three main areas. First, administrative.
Right.
Create a dedicated Ministry of Personnel and lay out a firm, public, 5-year recruitment roadmap.
And second, constitutional integrity.
Yes, a strong push for a constitutional amendment like the 41st Amendment. This would fix a minimum age for members at 55 and a maximum at 65.
To ensure experience.
Experience and vitality. And it would also mandate minimum qualifications, like having reached the rank of Secretary of the State Government for official appointees.
And finally, appointment integrity, making it more independent.
Correct. The suggestion is mandatory pre-consultation with the leader of the opposition for non-official members, a simple check to ensure they have high public standing and are genuinely independent.
And what about procedural reforms?
Syllabus revision needs to be regular and public, and crucially, test state-specific knowledge history, economy in an objective format. That minimizes subjective correction and all the issues that lead to litigation.
Okay, for our final deep dive, we're looking at institutional trust on a global scale. The huge controversy around the Wikipedia page titled Gaza Genocide.
This was a big deal. The page was locked back in November, restricting editing rights to only verified editors to prevent vandalism and partisan editing wars.
And it really blew up when the co-founder, Jimmy Wales, weighed in himself.
He did. He posted a personal statement criticizing the page, saying it failed Wikipedia's core neutrality standards. His argument was that the article's first sentence was stating, in Wikipedia's voice, that Israel is committing genocide.
Which he called a highly contested claim.
Exactly. To be clear, the lock page at the time started with a definition. The Gaza genocide is the ongoing, intentional, and systematic destruction of the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip carried out by Israel.
So it states it as a fact.
It does. And Wales suggested a neutral path. He said it should start with something like, multiple governments, NGOs, and legal bodies have described or rejected the characterization of Israel's actions in Gaza as genocide.
The distinction there is critical. It's about reporting who made the claim, not asserting the claim yourself.
Precisely. And just to maintain our own impartiality here, it's important to present the conflicting classifications the article itself cites. This is why it's so contested.
Right, so on one side,
you have the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry, which reported in September that Israel had committed genocide, citing 4 of the 5 acts from the 1948 Convention.
And that position is backed up by others.
Yes. The International Association of Genocide Scholars passed a resolution in August 2025 stating Israel carried out war crimes and genocide. And Human Rights Watch, back in December 2024, said Israeli authorities are responsible for the crime against humanity of extermination.
And for context, we should state the casualty figures cited in the article.
Absolutely. As of October 7, 67,173 people have been killed, including over 20,000 children. That's about 30% of the total, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health and Reuters.
So this debate, kicked off by the co-founder himself, is really forcing the Wikipedia community to look at its own core mission.
It is. It's forcing them to ask, how do you document a conflict this sensitive, where the very words you use are so highly charged, and still stick to the principle of neutrality that you were founded on? We've explored how high constitutional offices require individuals to rise above their political limitations for fairness, and we've also seen how chimpanzees show these surprisingly sophisticated rational thought processes. So consider this. What does it say about the limits of our own political and institutional systems if our very definition of rationality isn't even unique to us, and yet our human institutions like state PSCs or even a global platform like Wikipedia struggle so profoundly with achieving basic fairness, trust, and impartial documentation?
Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.